Daniel Harper woke before his alarm, the gray morning light filling the bedroom in a way that felt wrong. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against the ears. He reached across the bed without opening his eyes, expecting to feel Emma's warmth, the familiar rise and fall of her breathing, but his hand touched cold sheets instead. He opened his eyes then, fully awake, and saw her side of the bed perfectly smooth, as if it had not been slept in at all. For a moment, he told himself she must be in the bathroom or already downstairs, but something heavy settled in his chest. As he sat up, Emma was never this quiet in the mornings. She hummed while making coffee, shuffled around in her slippers, complained about the weather. Daniel stood and walked into the hallway, calling her name once, softly, then louder, his voice echoing back to him. No answer came. In the kitchen, everything looked untouched. The coffee machine was off. Her favorite blue mug sat clean and dry on the counter. The calendar on the fridge still showed today's date circled in red, a reminder Emma had written days ago about nothing important at all, just a habit she never skipped. Daniel noticed her coat was gone from the hook by the door, along with her scarf, the one she wore even when it wasn't cold. He told himself she might have stepped out early, but the longer he stood there, the more the feeling grew that this was not a normal morning. He checked the living room and stopped when he saw the empty space on the shelf where their framed anniversary photos used to be. They had taken that picture just 6 months earlier, smiling by the ocean, 20 years of marriage behind them. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Emma did not move things without telling him. She did not leave without saying something. He pulled out his phone and saw no messages, no missed calls. He sent her a short text asking where she was, then another, asking if she was okay. When no reply came, minutes stretching into an hour, his worry turned sharp. He walked through the house again, opening doors as if she might suddenly appear. In the bedroom closet, her clothes were mostly still there. But some hangers were missing, spaced out in a way that told him this was planned, not sudden. He sat on the edge of the bed, his thoughts racing back over the past few months, searching for signs he might have missed. They had not been fighting. They had not been close either. Their conversations had become short and polite, full of schedules and reminders, never feelings. Daniel worked long hours, always believing there would be time later to slow down, to listen more, to fix whatever felt distant between them. Emma had grown quieter, but he told himself that was just life settling into routine. He remembered her standing at the window some nights, looking out with a faraway expression, and how he had kissed her cheek distractedly before returning to his emails. The weight of that memory made his chest ache. By noon, Daniel had called. Her sister, her closest friend, even her old coworker. But no one had heard from Emma. No one knew where she was. Each call ended with worried silence and gentle questions Daniel could not answer. He sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the door, half expecting it to open. Imagining Emma walking in with an apology and an explanation that would make everything make sense, but the door stayed closed. As the day faded into evening, fear gave way to a deep, hollow sadness. Emma had not just stepped out, she had left. The woman he had shared 2 decades with, the woman who knew his habits, his flaws, his quiet hopes, had chosen to disappear without a word. Daniel leaned back in his chair, feeling the full weight of her absence settle over the house, realizing that whatever life he thought he understood had already changed. And he had no idea why or if she would ever come back. Emma Collins had not planned to leave the way she did. The feeling that pushed her out of the house had been building for years, quiet and heavy, like water rising behind a wall. From the outside, her life looked steady and safe. She had a long marriage, a decent home, and a husband who never raised his voice or broke his promises. But Emma felt unseen, like a person slowly fading from her own story. But Daniel was. Always tired, always focused on work, always saying he would listen later. Later never came. Their talks became short and careful, filled with routine words that carried no warmth. Emma tried to ignore the ache in her chest, telling herself that this was what long marriages turned into. But the silence between them kept growing. She stopped sharing her thoughts because they felt too heavy to explain. She stopped asking for time because she was tired of feeling like a burden. Then her job sent her to Seattle for a long-term consulting project, and that was where she met Michael Turner. Michael was not charming in an obvious way. He was calm, thoughtful, and kind in a way that felt rare. He asked real questions and waited for honest answers. During breaks, they talked about books, old dreams, and this strange feeling of reaching middle age and wondering where time went. Emma felt herself opening up without meaning to, surprised by how easy it felt to be heard. Michael noticed small things, like when she looked tired or when she smiled for real instead of out of habit. He never crossed a line, but the connection grew in quiet moments and long conversations that stayed with her after the workday ended. Emma knew she was stepping into dangerous ground, even if nothing physical happened. The bond made her realize what had been missing at home, and that truth hurt more than the guilt. She started coming back from trips feeling restless and sad, sitting across from Daniel at dinner and wondering how they had drifted so far apart. She thought about telling him everything, but fear held her back. She did not want to hurt him, and she did not know how to explain feelings she barely understood herself. One evening, after a long walk alone, Emma ended things with Michael. She told him she could not continue, that she needed to face her life honestly. Michael respected her decision, but his quiet disappointment stayed with her. Cutting him off did not fix the emptiness, only made it clearer. Emma realized that even without Michael, she could not go back to pretending everything was fine. She felt trapped between the life she had built and the person she no longer recognized. Nights became harder. She lay awake beside Daniel, listening to his breathing, wondering how two people could share a bed and feel so alone. As she started packing small things without thinking. A sweater here, a photo there, telling herself she just needed space to breathe. The morning she left, she stood in the hallway for a long time, holding her coat, listening to the house she had lived in for 20 years. She thought about waking Daniel, about trying one last time to explain, but fear and shame stopped her. She did not trust herself to speak without breaking down, and she did not trust him to truly hear her. So she left without a note, believing distance would give her clarity and spare them both a painful conversation. In the weeks that followed, Emma moved between cheap rentals and borrowed rooms, trying to understand what she had done. She missed Daniel in unexpected ways. The sound of his keys at the door, the way he always forgot where he left his glasses. She replayed moments from their marriage, wondering where things went wrong and how much blame she deserved. The truth she slowly accepted was simple and painful. She had not left because of another man. She had left because she felt invisible in her own life, and staying had started to feel like losing herself completely. Yet even as she told herself this, guilt followed her everywhere. She knew her silence had caused Daniel deep pain. She knew. Disappearing was not brave. Months passed, and the weight of unfinished words grew heavier. One night, sitting alone with her phone in her hand, Emma finally understood that running had not healed her. It had only delayed the truth. And that realization pushed her toward a message she had been afraid to send. A message that could reopen wounds but might finally explain why she left without saying goodbye. *5 months had passed since Emma vanished. And Daniel Harper's life had become a careful rhythm of work, errands, and lonely evenings. He went through the motions, answering emails, fixing the leaky faucet in the kitchen, and attending weekend family gatherings, all while a constant, gnawing emptiness sat in the space where Emma had once been. Friends offered advice in gentle tones. Time heals. Move on. She must have needed space, but Daniel knew that what he felt could not be soothed by platitudes. Every corner of the house reminded him of her. The chair she used for reading, small pile of magazines she loved, the little plants she watered every week. He stopped expecting her to walk through the door because he had learned, slowly and painfully, that hope could hurt as much as despair. Nights were the hardest. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, remembering moments from their 20 years together. From their first apartment with its cracked linoleum floor to the trip they took to Cape Cod, where they laughed at seagulls stealing their sandwiches. Memories became a mix of warmth and sharp pain, each one a reminder of what he had lost. He never stopped checking his phone, half expecting a message, a call, anything that could explain her disappearance. Then, one Thursday evening, as Daniel sat on the worn sofa with a cup of tea he did not taste, his phone buzzed. The screen showed an unknown number. Hesitant, his thumb hovered over the message. He tapped it open and froze. The text was short, simple, and immediately recognizable in its tone. "Daniel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to explain." His heart pounded. The words were hers. Emma. 5 months of silence and absence had all been reduced to this small, blinking message. He read it again, slower this time, letting each word sink in. She admitted she had formed an emotional connection with someone else, a connection that had never crossed physical lines, but had opened her eyes to the loneliness she had felt in their marriage. Her message was raw but careful. She wrote about nights spent staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was missing, like days where she tried to push herself back into the life she had built but kept hitting the wall of her own unhappiness. She did not excuse herself, did not blame Daniel, but explained her choices, her need to step away to find herself, and the pain it had caused both of them. Daniel felt a whirlwind of emotions as he read. Anger came first. How could she leave him without a word? Hurt followed, sharp and cutting, deeper than he expected after all this time. Yet beneath it, he felt a strange relief, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, she still cared. The text ended with a sentence that made his chest tighten. "I never stopped caring for you. I just didn't know how to stay without disappearing inside myself." His hands shook as he reread the lines, trying to steady himself. He wanted to respond immediately, to ask every question racing through his mind, but he paused. He typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, he sent the simplest message he could. "Why now?" Within minutes, her reply came. "Because I finally understand what I ran from, and what I may have lost forever." Daniel's mind reeled. The past 5 months of longing, anger, and confusion all collided in that small screen. Her words were a bridge across the distance, fragile but real. For the first time since she left, he felt the pull of the connection they had shared, the reminder of 20 years of shared life and love that had not completely faded. He sat back, staring at the ceiling, realizing that this message had reopened old wounds, but also offered a path forward. The message did not promise reunion, forgiveness, or answers. It was simply a truth laid bare, an admission of mistakes and feelings left unspoken for months. Daniel understood that the next step would be difficult. They would need to talk, to face the choices, the silence, the absence. He would have to confront his own role in the distance that had grown between them. Yet, for the first time since she left, he felt movement, a shift that made the empty house feel less permanent. A conversation awaited, one that could lead to healing, closure, or even a new beginning. The unknown stretched before him like the first morning after a storm. And Daniel, for the first time in months, felt the faint stirrings of hope that what had been lost might not be gone forever. 2 weeks after the messages exchanged between them, Daniel Harper found himself sitting in a small, quiet cafe in Vancouver, Washington. A place chosen because it felt neutral, halfway between the life he had known and the uncertainty that lay ahead. When Emma walked in, he almost didn't recognize her. Time had changed her slightly. Her clothes simpler, her clothes simpler. Her eyes carried a calm he had not seen in years, but she was unmistakably the woman he had loved, the one who had left without saying goodbye. Daniel's first instinct was to speak, to demand answers. But he hesitated, realizing that the conversation needed care, not anger. Emma slid into the seat across from him, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, the same nervous tension he felt mirrored in her posture. They exchanged greetings, polite yet weighted, as if each word carried decades of unspoken feelings. She started first, telling him she never intended to hurt him, explaining in simple, honest sentences the loneliness she had felt, the emotional connection she had formed with someone else, and how it had forced her to confront truths about herself and their marriage that she had long ignored. Daniel listened, his own emotions swirling hurt, relief, and the faint spark of hope battling against the sharp edge of betrayal. He realized that love and disappointment could coexist, that the woman across from him had not stopped caring, but had lost her way. As they spoke, memories of shared vacations, quiet Sunday mornings, and late-night conversations surfaced. They laughed once briefly at an inside joke about a camping trip where they had gotten lost in the woods, and for a moment the years of separation felt lighter. But the laughter was tempered by the reality of what had happened, the months of absence, the unspoken mistakes, the distance that had grown between them. Emma admitted she had left to find herself, not to punish him, and Daniel acknowledged that he had been distant, absorbed in work and routines, blind to the quiet desperation. In the life they had built together, they talked about trust and honesty, about how rebuilding it would not be easy, how words alone could not erase months of fear, absence, and heartbreak. Emma did not ask to return home, and Daniel did not promise to take her back. Instead, they agreed to move slowly to see if the fragile bond they shared could survive confrontation and truth. After the cafe conversation, they walked together down the quiet street, side by side but not touching, each step carrying the weight of past mistakes and the possibility of reconciliation. They noticed the small details, the way the wind carried, the scent of fallen leaves, the distant sound of a child laughing in a yard, the soft glow of the streetlights, and for the first time since her departure, the world seemed full of potential instead of loss. They discussed their daily lives, their routines, what had changed and what remained the same, sharing small victories and regrets, learning to communicate without pretense, without silence filling the gaps. Daniel realized that love after betrayal was different. No, it was quieter, more cautious, and required deliberate attention. It demanded honesty and patience, and a willingness to acknowledge the pain caused by both absence and emotional mistakes. Emma understood that forgiveness would not come easily, and that she had to accept Daniel's hurt as real, just as she had to accept her own regrets. They parted that evening without a dramatic declaration, without promises of a future they were not yet ready to embrace. Yet as they walked away from each other, there was a sense of connection, fragile but undeniable. A shared understanding that while the past could not be undone, the present offered a chance to rebuild, even if slowly. Daniel returned home that night, the house still quiet but no longer completely empty in his heart. He reflected on the cafe conversation, on the honesty between them, on the possibility of seeing Emma again, and felt a cautious hope he had not felt in months. Emma, in her own space, thought about Daniel's words, about the history they shared, and about the small steps they had taken toward understanding. Both realized that love after betrayal was not simple, but it could still exist in a new form. One rooted in truth, acknowledgement of mistakes, and a willingness to face the unknown together. And as the night deepened, both Daniel and Emma knew that their story was far from over. It was merely entering a new chapter, one shaped by reflection, honesty, and the delicate chance of rediscovery.